Welcome, everyone. My name is Aaron Padilla. I'm the Director of Learning Engagement here at the Honolulu Museum of Art. I want to welcome you all to our Artist Talks, a series of programs here at HOMA, this time virtual, for our exhibition, Artists of Hawaii Now. If you haven't been to the museum to see the exhibition, shame on you, and I hope you can make it here soon. But Artists of Hawaii Now is an exhibition that explores the struggles and opportunities of our present time and place through a visually dynamic call to action, sparking empathy, community building, and change. So tonight we're going to have a conversation with two of the artists, actually three of the artists that represent two of the works in the exhibition, Gaye Chan and Cara and Kyle Oba. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. This is an interactive conversation. This is a conversation between myself and Gaye and Cara and Kyle, and also you folks watching at home. So if you have any comments or questions, please use the Q&A box below at the bottom of your screen and type that in there. And then we'll go ahead and address that later in this talk. So what's going to happen is we're going to go ahead and have the artists do their presentations on their work, and then we'll circle back with a set of some time for Q&A. Okay, so our first artist that here tonight is Gaye Chan. I'm going to read this, Gaye, if it's okay. Gaye was born in Hong Kong and immigrated to the United States in 1969 and is based in Kaneohe, Hawaii. She's a conceptual artist who is recognized for her solo and collaborative activities that take place in the virtual space, in publications, on the streets, as well as in galleries. She received her MFA from the San Francisco Art Institute and is currently the interim Associate Dean for Administration of the College of Arts, Languages, and Letters at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Her work, as you see here on the screen, Wanted, Basket Makers Apply Here, Will Train. Gaye, take it away.
Thank you, Aaron. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the whole team that did the work to make this happen. And I look forward to the conversation and talking about barrels of monkeys. I'm just going to pause here so you can copy down the link because those are very important to the talk. So this project started totally accidentally, and I was in Vancouver 9 years ago on sabbatical. I went to an organic distribution company to get some overripe tomatoes to make sauce, and I saw this. You know how artists, when you see a whole lot of something, then you think, oh, what can I do with that? So I went to the owner and I said, can I have some of these? And she said, oh, please take them all because we can't find a recycling company who can address this. You know, Vancouver is a very ecologically minded city, and even they didn't have anyone to recycle. So I took a bunch. And I knew that you can make baskets with this because I've seen someone sell that in Chinatown here in Honolulu years and years ago. So I watched about 20 to 30 YouTube videos and I cobbled together something. And it took me about 2 weeks to make this first basket. I took it back to the distributing company and I said, hey, look, I made a basket with your trash. And how about if I give you a basket every week and then you give me like your overripe and misshapen and stuff that you can't sell? And they said, oh, what a great deal. So I did for a whole year during my sabbatical. I chronicled this process on my website. So if you want to take a look, most beautiful organic vegetables that I've ever had. Learned how to cook stuff that I've never been seen. So these straps, I never really thought about them before, and I've never made a single basket. It's completely new material for me. And I started thinking about these things. They're packing straps that are tied around cardboard boxes or a pile of cardboard boxes on pallets. You can see in the background that every pallet, they tie all the different boxes to the pallets. So you can see how every container that moves around the world has miles and miles of these straps, unless they're wrapped by the industrial saran wrap stuff. These containers are moved on barges all around the world. Of course, there are certain spaces that are producers and certain spaces that are consumers. Basically, the direction is that exploited people from the global south, they make very little money producing stuff that the global north wants. And we consume and consume and we consume, and then we waste. And then the trash gets moved back into the global south for these gleaners to try and make use of. This process is really, I think, destructive to all of us, not only because of the ecological impact, but also that I think in order for us to have become consumers, we had to be de-skilled from knowing how to make anything. So I thought that maybe my effort in making baskets is one way to kind of think about this process. I started looking for images of people that make these baskets around the world. Much of them are made with recycled ones like I do and did. Some of them are also made with new straps as well. She doesn't look happy at all. She doesn't look happy at all because this is how much they make. This is Alibaba. If you buy a minimum order of 100, you can get them for 70 cents to $3.60. So of course, Alibaba is making a profit. So you can imagine how much these workers make. So look at the basket. Look at this basket, it's about the same. This one at Nordstrom is $230. I'm like, there's something really wrong with this picture here. So who am I in this power relationship? You know, I look just like those people who make those baskets, really. You know, when I present myself in any room, I think that I'm immediately racialized and gendered, class, and everything else. So I thought that maybe I will present my body this way in a performance piece, also in Vancouver, titled Sweat. The alternative space was in Chinatown in Vancouver. So preceding the show, for about 2 weeks, I went to all the shops and I started asking them for these straps and started collecting them. I amassed a fair amount, not a huge amount, and I dumped them into the exhibition space store window. Didn't really do very much announcement because I wanted people to encounter it by accident. Using Chinatown colors, I made a cozy for an A-frame and called it a basket making demonstration. There's lots of traffic there in Chinatown that people just walked by and watched or saw and just wondered what was going on. You can see me there. I made a cocoon-like thing so that the only thing that you can see clearly are my hands that I slip into like a sleeve. And I'm behind that mesh. I just make baskets there all day. In fact, along that street, there are a number of sweatshops that produce all kinds of other things, other people that you can't see. I would be there about maybe 4 to 8 hours over a couple of weeks. And the people who would shop there or work there would just come by and watch me. After 2 weeks, I can't remember exactly how many baskets I made. I brought the baskets back to the workers who gave me straps. This was about the end of my sabbatical. And I thought, there's still so many straps. What am I going to do? So I came back to Hawaii and I started to see straps everywhere. city mill, and then there's a medical supply shop. And I got these guys who started saving them for me too. And in a way, because I have like more space, there's more opportunity to save straps. And I just couldn't stop because I just couldn't figure out like what to, like I couldn't stop because it would go into the trash. And I obsessively started to make baskets and baskets and baskets. As an artist, I've never really played with color, so I became more interested in that. Just experimenting how things look together. And I kind of realized that on the side of the basket, they look like tiny little abstract paintings. So I was excited about that. But no matter how many baskets I made, I just couldn't get reused enough of them. So I started doing demonstrations and workshops, trying to lure people into my obsession. And then I did a kind of a 2-week-long collaborative project with a bunch of students in Mary Babcock's class. You know how Hawaii, we have a lot of that blue tarp stuff that goes on top of tents? We made one that was, I think, 10 by 10 feet. So it's like a sunshade. It's been 5 years and it's holding up really well. But still, there's so many straps. This is one store. Every 2 weeks, I can get this many straps. This is really a problem. So I think that this project is just like, unfortunately, unending. So my latest scheme is to use the Artists of Hawaii Now platform to lure more people into my mania. I'm doing demonstrations. I am making baskets there, even when nobody's looking. And then with the museum's support, I was able to hire someone to help me make an instructional video that's now on YouTube and Vimeo, so that I'm recontributing to the teachers who taught me how to make a basket. So I'm just hoping more people will join me. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaye. More baskets. So next we have Kyle and Cara Oba, husband and wife team. Well, sorry, let me read this, the introductions, and it's interesting because they have very vastly different introductions because they're vastly different people, but yet their work is always consistent across the board. But Cara is a design strategist based in Honolulu, Hawaii, facilitating organizational change in nonprofit and public sectors. Her goal is to use technology, both analog and digital forms, to support and foster community relationship. Her art explores individual expression, agency, and the social body in context of collaboration and shared spaces. Her educational background is in mechanical engineering and industrial design with an emphasis on ethnographic methods and research-based processes. Kyle uses software development to facilitate design interventions. His experimental art practice integrates new technologies, computer vision, machine learning, mobile and distributed systems to solve problems, study human behavior, and question conventional commercial and social use of new technologies. More interesting than technology itself, he believes, are the local contexts and reasons why and how we use our technology. Okay, so moving from the very analog basket making, where we're going into the world of AI and high-tech 21st century stuff. Their work is titled Recapturing Home. This is Kyle and Cara Oba. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, Aaron. Let me just go ahead and share some slides here.
Let me see them.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, actually, our title was originally Recapturing Home, and over the pandemic, we actually shifted it a lot because we were going to use machine learning and artificial intelligence to sort of actually try to categorize people and label people. But in the course of the pandemic, it sort of flipped, and we actually wanted to make it more about collaboration. Instead of being the subject of artificial intelligence, we wanted people to experience having more control over it and using it as a way to sort of leverage their own cognition abilities, you know, a way to reflect. And so actually the title of our project is now Dreaming of Home. And that actually is in reference to the machine as well as for yourself. So I'll let you.
Yeah, so this image shows physically what's in the space. There's a computer on the left with a giant GPU in it, and then three monitors. So the first screen on the left-hand side shows a computer vision model, and this is an example of it here, which we'll discuss in a minute. And then there's a middle screen, which invites the museum visitor to go to a website, which we'll also discuss in a bit, where they can make an input, and then generate an image of their own. And the screen on the right will create generated images based on the input from the museum visitor, and we'll show you some examples of that.
So in order to create what you're seeing here is, I collected thousands of images from real estate listings. And so this is where sort of, even though it's technology, there's a lot of manpower that goes into creating these models. And actually, it's built off of someone else's data and someone else's labor in order to create that technology from which we were able to build off of. And so anyway, Kyle can actually describe what the model is.
Yeah, so Cara collected thousands of photos from real estate listings, and we used that as data to train a neural network generative model that creates images based on essentially what you feed it. So all of the images that we produce are of homes which don't actually exist in the world, but are produced by a model which has learned what homes look like based on the information that we provided. And the homes, the real estate listings that Cara used were all for homes that were larger than 5 bedrooms or larger, which we found was sort of like the union between problematic monster homes, if you will, and monster homes that are completely legal but might be considered extremely large for a single family. And that was sort of the confluence of where building laws seem to have been skirted,
Right.
Based on the listings descriptions.
Right. So from there, what you would see, and if you were actually at the exhibit in the space, it's paired with actual text listings. So the text part is directly extracted from some real estate listings just to give people a sample of the types of things and to get a sense of what the audience is for these real estate listings. There's a lot of different issues that go into these homes, and just through doing the research, we found that, or at least, you know, for my having to read through all these different real estate listings, kind of coming away with a very different impression about what monster homes are. So I think going into this project, there was this idea that monster homes, you know, there's this idea is like greater than 8 bedrooms, and it's, you know, built flush to the lot size, and it's a lot of concrete. But once you start getting into it, there's a lot of nuance there, right? And when you talk to people about monster homes and what their issues are, it comes down more to use rather than the actual physical structure. So in this presentation, we're trying to show sort of the variety of, you know, I guess the different structures that's imagined in addition to the very real listings that occur with them.
And just really briefly, this is the middle screen where we are inviting folks to go to a website, use the QR code, you enter your concept for what you believe a Hawaii home should be or is to you, as well as selecting a seed image, which is one of the fake generated homes. And then our machine in the gallery produces an image based on your seed text. So there's like a seed image, which is completely fake, and then your seed text, which is something that you provide, and then the neural network goes to work and sort of produces an image.
So I just included this quote because this is something that came up through my research. So in part of the research is looking not just at Hawaii and homes, but also thinking about I guess the generation of like, where does suburbia even come from? And the idea of what is a just city and how do you even create sort of an environment that's just for everyone that's there. And we're just going to show you some examples of outputs here, and we'll just talk over it a little bit. So that you can see sort of, this is what a model does with text input. Yeah, so it's using the words to create new images and new imaginings of homes based on what it was fed.
I imagine I probably don't want to get too technical here, just to keep it short. But this model is slightly different than the one that we use to generate the video of the slowly morphing homes at the beginning. This is a completely different technology that is fed the artificial images that we produce, and then also the text from the viewer. And then it actually essentially is guided by your text to find an image that it believes fits the text that you've provided.
Right. And so the idea here is that we wanted people to sort of participate in imagining for themselves, what could a future Hawaii home be? Or what is a Hawaii home now? And then what is it that you want to sort of portray in your image? And I think this is really just about allowing people space to play and having a public space to play, to share their ideas, and being able to reflect, like, once this thing creates an image for you, like, is this actually what you intended in your own words? Does this help you articulate your ideas? And seeing sort of the machine's version of what you're saying, how does that change your own, I guess, trajectory in terms of thought? Like, maybe I don't want, like, maybe I want to be more imaginative, and seeing other people's ideas. Like, how do you start to reframe your own ideas about what home is or what it could be? And so that was sort of the fun part of sort of sharing out the gallery, so that it's not necessarily just about the machine's input, but also just the collaborative nature of people sort of dreaming together, even though it's not like a shared space in a single image, but a collection of images. And that way we can sort of see what it is that our community is thinking about, and whether it's playful or if it's very negative. There's some very, some people took it to not be a positive future, but sort of a way to just a platform to complain. And I think that's still okay. And I think it's helpful sometimes to see these different ideas displayed next to each other.
Yeah, so there's a lot of opportunities for us to understand more about how this technology works, just based on sort of like the interesting inputs that people provide, like some of the edge cases, some of the things where people say things that they don't like, but the model doesn't quite understand human grammar. So it actually produces something that somebody doesn't like because it doesn't know what not means, or I don't like this means. And then just sort of like on a meta level, like we use this type of project to understand an issue better and a technology better. And so I think part of what we're trying to convey is that through the experimentation with the technology and providing users a way to experiment with the technology themselves, they will themselves understand the technology slightly better, and then be able to ask better or more informed questions of technology moving forward. This is just sort of an aside, but we had just discussed earlier today, like, for example, like self-driving cars, right? Because they are powered by something that's called artificial intelligence, we don't necessarily question whether or not artificial intelligence, quote unquote, should be used for autopilot, for example, as opposed to, say, something else, because we're just sort of assuming that it's artificially intelligent. But if we actually considered it to be something else besides AI, we might have other questions, like maybe this technology could be used for something else, like, I don't know, better braking or something. Anyway, that was sort of like a long-winded way of saying these issues are entangled with society and regulation, and we believe the monster home issue is also entangled in that way, and we found that through a lot of the inputs that we got from people on what they were interested in, what they were not interested in. Sorry, I just left you on a screen of Catalina Island there for a little while. It's near and dear to my heart.
Was that a plug, Kyle? Was that a plug?
Catalina Island is great.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Great presentation, both of you. So let's jump into a conversation. If there's anybody out there that has any questions, just reminding, go ahead and plop your question in the Q&A box below, and then we'll go ahead and pose them to the artists. But I wanted to get started here and just, kind of frame this and contextualize it within the museum, so HOMA has a number of strategic priorities going on as an institution. And one of them is to create relevant, dynamic, world-class art and education experiences, right? And we fully believe that, this exhibition, Artists of Hawaii Now, is a great representation of that, of world-class art and ideas that has been born and bred and created right here in our home, right? So both the works that have been shared today are two of my very favorites in the exhibition, and I'm gonna start this off with something that Gaye shared with me several years ago, or many years ago, about great art. And this is from an interaction which he had with Earl Jackson, who was a writer, or I'm sorry,
A film critic.
Describing her work. And he said that work is like a barrel of monkeys, right? Everybody remember that little game? And I'm just so happy that I have, like, this is the barrel of monkeys, right? And I thought, great art is about having depth and layers and connections and references. The more, the better, right? It's like a good movie filled with Easter eggs. And every time you go ahead and you view it, or that movie or that work of art, you see something new, you see another connection. And I was always, that analogy stuck with me, and I use it as many times as I can whenever I'm given that opportunity, because I think it's a really great one. And I would like to start off with that question to you folks. It's like, how is your work a barrel of monkeys? Or each other's work a barrel of monkeys? Like, really, Gaye, you're just presenting baskets made out of trash, right? How is that great? How is that art? Or Kyle and Cara, like, the computer's doing all of your work. You didn't paint or sculpt or build or construct, well, anything, right? So I'm gonna throw that out to you guys. Like, how is it great? What makes great art to you folks?
How dare you, Aaron?
I'm trying to figure out how many monkeys there are.
Yeah, how many monkeys?
I'm counting monkeys. Because I think that whether my work is art or not, because I'm old enough to not so really care about that so much. And I think that what's more important is what I do interesting. How do I make what I do more interesting for other people, and then for myself? And I think that the way that the straps project had worked, and it's not really about baskets, right? It's really about straps. Is that it reminds me that everything that we see in our built environment or nature that has been altered by human societies is the first monkey. And I think that's really exciting for me, because it's like you can never be bored. So I think that for me, that's how you enter into artistic practice.
The first monkey, yeah.
Maybe tee something up for Cara, but what I was trying to like squeeze in there under our like self-imposed time limit there was that the issue of housing in Hawaii and this issue of monster homes is tied very closely with issues with how things are being it's tied very closely to society, community, family, economics, government and regulation and enforcement. I'm probably missing a few other things there, but class. race, gender, labor, etc. There's, I mean, it's tied into so many of those things, and then yet when we try to address it, we try to, you know, I feel like it's I don't think well, simultaneously, I don't think anybody would say like this is easy thing to fix, but at the same time I hear a lot of very easy solutions. You know, we just need to regulate, or we just need to pass this law, or we just need to enforce these other laws, you know, or this one department needs to be less corrupt, or, you know, things like that. I don't know, that wasn't very much of a tee up, but that's what I
Yeah, I don't know. We can talk. Well, I was just going to say it's kind of interesting because we're not trained artists, right? So we don't even come from that art background. But I think for us, like the way that we approach our projects is really about experimentation and seeing how far we can go with. I mean, I guess maybe we come from a different standpoint of maybe we're trying to simultaneously educate people about technologies at the same time that we're trying to learn and educate ourselves about topics. So it's like, you know, how much can we learn about the monster home topic, and using technology to sort of explore that further than we would normally, you know, and sort of the exploration is something that we want to do together with other people. So that's sort of where like the collaborative practice comes in. And for us, I think that's what's the most fun part about art, is sort of more like the serendipity, the times that you get sort of just like chance occurrences, you know, and necessarily, I mean, not necessarily with other people per se, but sometimes like just with the technology, you know, like sometimes we'll anyway, we do a bunch of explorations, like colorizing photos, because we started with archived photos, you know, and just going through that process was like a learning experience, right? Like, well, what do I learn from just looking at whatever archive photos we have in Hawaii of Hawaii homes, and then thinking about, well, what are we even documenting, you know, and what, like, who even gets to decide what gets documented? Like back in the past, it's like, you know, there's also a difference between like vernacular homes versus like architect homes, right? And why are they categorized separately? And why is it that we have, you know, so there's all these issues that go far into the past that we don't even touch upon, but we get to sort of start to look at that as we start just trying to find data to feed into the machines. And so it's just a fun experiment and for us, and then to be able to share it with other people and just to see how other people respond is always sort of an interesting experience. And in a way, like just seeing the feedback that we get just from the participation, and then that's like another level of learning for us and hopefully for other people, you know, to see what is it that people think about the world, and then what are the things that they've created. And I'm hoping that some of them are, you know, excited or intrigued or surprised by the things that they were able to create on their own, using something that maybe they wouldn't have ever thought of as, like, you know, being accessible to them, you know, like machine learning. Is that something that the average person thinks, oh, I'm just going to go and stop by the museum and interact with that today? You know, like, I don't know if that's like part of our usual, I don't know, expectations for daily living. But I think it's something that could be, right? Like just, anyway, yeah, just rambling.
And before I forget, what I was, you know, like something that Gaye said in her original introduction, sort of like seeing the scrap material and then not being able to not see it anymore, not being able to unsee it. I just was struck by this metaphor of like pulling on a thread. It's almost like you're just pulling on this thread, it's a literal strap, and it's just never ending. And then once you see that this particular material is being wasted and then also and not used and could be used for other things. I mean, I wonder to what extent that causes people to see other things in the same way, or et cetera, but I was just not like a profound insight, but I was just struck by that image in my head.
I really like that, because that's, you know, goes back to the monkey thing. But I wanted to bring another monkey to Cara and Kyle's piece, is that there's something that you two haven't touched on yet, and it's not normal for me to talk about aesthetics, but for me, like, your work is my favorite project in the whole show because of all the monkeys. And there are two things that happen when I'm experiencing a piece that I don't even think that, I'm not even sure that you intended it to be that way. One is that when I'm watching the first component, when the images would change, the machine would change the images from one thing to another. And then I'm also trying to read this description of the sale. And when I look up, it's different. Like, and I'm always like, oh my God, what happened? You know, what did I miss? And so there's the what did I miss experience, and then there's like, I doubt myself. It's like, wait a minute, I thought it was something else, or wait, how did this become that? And I think that all of these experience of shock and dismay and confusion is like exactly what's happening to our built environment. You just look away for a minute and it's like, oh my God, where did that 7-Eleven come from? You know? So I really like how the aesthetics replicate often what I experience in the real world. And the other part is like I think it's a trick, you know. I really have a lot of problems with audience participation in artwork, but yours is hilarious because they all turn out to be like horrible airbrush black velvet paintings. And I'm just like, I'm dying here. Everyone is like a hideous black velvet painting.
I take offense to that, Gaye, because I thought my house was really nice. It's nicer than the house that I live in right now, actually. I was like, yeah, I love that house. No.
I mean, it's kind of like working with faces. Thank you for saying that, Gaye. That's very nice of you. But one thing I would say about the generated images on the right-hand side, or like the audience generated images, if you will, is that it's kind of like working with faces, which is one of the things that we did on previous projects, but also with this project, which you don't see. Like if this project was everything that we had tried, it would be like 15 screens. It would kind of like wrap around 2 walls, and it would have taken us 5 years. But it's kind of like working with images where like the house is something that you have an idea what a house looks like. So we could have almost put up like complete static, and then people would see some, you know, they would just be like, oh, it's a house. It's not really the house I was thinking, but it's a house. It's like kind of one of those things, in my opinion.
Like people see what they want to see. Is that what you're saying?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, or even when it's not what they want to see, they still see something, but they're like, oh, that's not a house. That's something else. It's this thing.
I wrote down, you know, listening to your both your comments on the barrel of monkeys. I think 2 things kind of stood out to me. You know, there's this level of authenticity and earnest in your approaches. This true kind of sense of curiosity and in not necessarily solving a problem, but trying to know more and more without an end. And then there's just, you know, like how much can we learn? And thinking about both of these works, what's represented in the galleries is just like a mere snapshot in a long, like never-ending movie. Like Gaye, is there an end? Will you stop making baskets and move on to something else? And you know, Cara and Kyle, like same thing. Like when will like I can see this like just being like let loose on the internet and just being there, being, you know, engaged with forever, you know. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of, I guess, you know, bringing it back to just like traditional, you know, works of art where artists work in series. You know, this is almost talk about it like as a passion project. And you know, how did you folks decide on what the snapshot was in the gallery, and where does the work go from here?
I thought we'd hear Gaye first. I'm kind of curious, like, because I kind of want to see what you might do with it next. Like, I have ideas. I'm like, I wonder if I could try to build something with it. Like, I look at it myself, like the giant thing straps. I'm like, wow, what could I make with that? Like, I kind of want to just take some home and mess with it. So you've intrigued
I have
me.
some for you. I'll make some for you.
Okay,
Surprised
yeah,
you
I'd be
haven't
happy to
already,
take
Karen.
some. I know. Yeah. But I mean, on our side, I can tell you that I'm going to speak for Kyle briefly, but he's already been playing with the next generation of machine learning to mess with these homes further, and just to see how good or strange they get. But I mean, I think I mean, he's always playing, so I can speak.
I mean, I think, well, just to speak to Aaron's question, I think the one of the, I don't know, interesting. I'll just say interesting things instead of saying like horrible things about software is that the software projects are never done. They're either, you know, you can always do more work on them, and then you can always, and then you always have maintenance, right? So there's always these questions of, you know, there's always questions of when you're done, because essentially you never are. So that's one aspect of it. Another thing that I would say is that, you know, there's some obvious stuff that we've sort of wanted to do with the images and the input. Yeah, I don't know how much to go into it, but essentially there's this giant set of images and text that people are providing, and then sort of thinking about how to categorize that, like how, what that says about, you know, the people that are, you know, making the input, you know, are they talking about homes? Are they talking about communities? Are they talking about things they want or they don't want? Are they just having fun? You know, that type of stuff. One of the dangers I think of that is that it's sort of, once we start talking about it under those terms, and any categories that we're not selecting or sort of erased, such as the idea of just playing around with it to, or using it to learn more about the technology, which I think is also a very valid use of it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the technology is weird, right? Because it like this StyleGAN 2 is what we use, and it's a NVIDIA software that they gave away for free. And then, you know, like within, I think, a month of the opening of the exhibition, they released StyleGAN 3, which is like another very similar model that we are available to use. It has some differences, but essentially it's an improved, well, I don't know if it's improved, but it is in some ways improved from the old technology. Yeah, and then just as a note, StyleGAN 2 was released after we decided to build this project. So it's like the technology is constantly changing and moving. And it's sort of like a constant sort of discovery process to understand, like, well, what is the technology good at? What is it not good at? Does it raise new questions? Does it require different inputs? Does it have interesting, you know, things that we can play around with, that sort of stuff. So it's really hard to tell what even January will look like. So that's fun for us.
So what you're saying is that you're guided really, I'm going to use my term, I'm not sure if it's fitting, like found material, right? Found content, and then how it transforms your own work, in a sense, your core interests. Would that be right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's some combination of, I don't know, maybe I should let you answer that.
Well,
because
I mean, for you, like the tools themselves, the technology themselves tend to drive his work. And then a lot of times it's, you know, so if it's good at photos, then we'll end up playing with photos, and we'll start with whatever we have around.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's true for both of you folks, right? I mean, Gaye, like you would have not made get baskets if it wasn't a strap.
Yeah.
If it was something else, you know, it would have been, you know.
Yeah, and I think that for this conversation, I think it's and art enthusiasts out there, I think that it's a very different approach for some artists. Like if I was a painter, I would be completely overwhelmed by a blank canvas. It's, for me, it's like nothing. I have nothing to react to. So I really like having the history, almost like the endless fish line to pull. So return to Aaron's question, like, you know, how you, I guess that's always a typical art question. How do you know when you're done, you know? I want to be done. But they keep making, they just keep making that shit. Then they end up in my garage. I don't know. I can't throw it away. I want to be done.
Yeah.
Help me.
You know, well, I don't know. Like, do you really want to be done, Gaye? And you know, I think I think it goes back to, because it's not about like making and it's interesting because you folks are like slaves to the practice and process in a way that you're slaves to your curiosity. I think, you know, and it's so, you know, I've known you, both of you folks, or all of you folks, for a long time, and it's one project leads into another. There's like,
Yeah.
there is a thread that goes through it, and it really is about like this. If it, I want to be interested and challenged and curious, and I've found something that I can't really figure out, and I need to stick with it until I don't.
Yeah.
And maybe it's that, you know.
So I'm dreaming now. Okay. So I'm hoping that people like Cara's like, oh, what am I going to make with this? And that there's one of the people that attended my last demo, she's making these really cool round baskets with beautiful flat rims. Like she's already gotten way more fancy than me in 3 weeks or something. So I'm hoping like there will be a whole bunch of those people who will start, like your word, Aaron, like the project will go feral, right? They will take it.
Mhm.
Then I can work on my edible weeds. That their garage is where the straps will end up, not my garage.
That's a good hope.
Yeah, that's my hope.
Yeah, good dream. What's your hope and dream for your piece, Kyle and Cara? Or
I was going
nightmare?
to say something about process, like that one of the constraints that we do have is, or I don't know, okay, I shouldn't say we, like you're saying, we're very different in terms of our background, but we end up working together for some reason. One of the things that I think is really interesting is just taking technology, which is obviously not, well, not obviously, but it would technology that came from somewhere else, and then forcing it through a local context, if that makes sense, or or I guess forcing a local context through the technology. We have a lot of models that do X, right? Like generate faceless. But do we have a lot of models freely available on the internet that generate, let's say, East Oahu real estate faces? No, that would be interesting. I think we have a lot of
We actually
object.
have that though.
Well, we do now. We have a lot of, like, you know, detectors of, you know, I don't know, like bicycles, you know, for cars or whatever. But do we have a lot of detectors of, I don't know, lays in, you know, this is just a random example, lays in government photos or something. Like, I find the idea of that, just something that basic, very interesting, as sort of like a, not because it's interesting in itself, because for me, it's an interesting jumping off point for, you know, oh, okay, here's this new thing. What can I do with it? Okay, start hammering this thing with it. That's
So I think,
not at all an answer to your question.
I want to follow that thread a little bit, because I think that representation, different modes of representation, different technologies teaches us how to see, but it also teaches us what not to see. You know, so
Yeah.
I guess, like, say film, right? It was made for a certain kind of skin tone and things, like, so you actually don't see things because they're underexposed. So I think in that regard, the kind of technology you folks are working with is very politicized and very class-based, about surveillance technology and national security and all that stuff. But I think that I'm hoping that, I think that these two projects is like what Kyle earlier said, that once you see something, if the project can allow people to see something that we're not supposed to see, and then you can't unsee it, then the world looks different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's the bigger goal than cleaning my garage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
that's
agree.
great art too, right?
Yeah.
It's being moved, right? So I have my thing about like monkeys. It's my whole thing is that art is integers, right? You start off at 0, and then you engage with a work of art, and you're moved, you know, in one direction or another, +1, +10, or -1, -10. the art fails or art succeeds if you get moved. The more down the line, the better. If you leave it at 0 and you see the same as you did after, then your art has failed. And I think as people come and visit the exhibition and see your work and see your work elsewhere, and interact with both of these projects in their exhibition state or their feral state somewhere down the line, I know that they'll be moved. I know that there'll be many monkeys to be discovered, and I want to thank you all for the great work that you folks put together, and good stuff. This is a really great conversation. If there's, I don't know if we have anybody still listening. I'm captivated. Oh, we have 14 people still. If there's any other questions or comments that you out there have for the artists, thank you. Great discussion from Patrick. You're welcome, Patrick, on behalf of the artists. Yeah,
I was gonna say there's a book by Shoshana Zuboff. If anybody wants to read 700 pages on the topic of surveillance capitalism and seeing things in a new way in order to see them at all, you can pick that book up and
is there a shorter book
slog through it.
Or
well, truth be told, you only have to read the introduction.
Okay, all right. But yeah, it's always great chatting with you folks. I'm always eyes are open up a little bit more and see the world a little bit differently. But if there are any other questions or comments from you, the artists or the people at home, I want to thank everybody for jumping on this call, and take a look at our website, honolulumuseum.org, and follow the links of Artists of Hawaii Now for more programming over the course of the exhibition. And come by and see the show again. Maybe you'll see some new things in Kyle, Cara, and Gaye's work. All right. So
I have lots of straps for you.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
I'm gonna go grab some too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we should have like a side street exhibition on Young or something with just like straps or something like that. We'll set that up. All right.
I was gonna say, can we? I just want to say thanks to everyone at the museum, Marlene and Taylor, obviously, and then all you all folks for putting this together. Thank you very much. It's been great, and obviously we wouldn't have been able to even lift our computer into the space without the help of everyone at the museum who did all that work for us. So
is it that heavy?
It's pretty heavy. It cut my hand open.
Oh man.
Wow.
Scars, blood, sweat, and tears, man. That's what makes reality. All right. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Hui hou.